Hey, keepers. Okay, so let's talk about detoxing. Talk a little bit about detoxing. Intuition's a good way to get into that. Intuition came up quite a bit today in my readings, hence why I'm doing this. So, what does it mean to be in your intuition? What does it mean to activate that, to use it, to facilitate it, to strengthen it, to keep it going? Well, for starters, it's not just a mental thing. Because they say, like, gut feeling. Gut is directly connected to the mental, but it has to pass through a specific auric field to get there. So you have to bring it up through your heart and into your mind. So that often entails not just living in that intuitive knowledge, if you will, of purely fact-based, because oftentimes intuition, we can't take one specific thing and pinpoint, okay, so this is where this comes in and this is how I know I'm supposed to behave based on this one specific fact. It's an inner knowing. And people oftentimes get a little bit confused that this is some sort of weird gift that only particular people or certain people on the planet have. No, this is just like everything else. It's a muscle, and if it's worked continuously, it will develop and strengthen, and it can be part of your everyday life, is listening to your intuition. So when we're discussing this as far as detox goes, when I refer to intuition, I'm referring to that unknowing knowing. Like, it's coming from inside of you. That flame is being tickled. It's being shifted. It's being moved. It's flickering in a new way. And it's telling you, you need to pay attention. People use the word psychic in a very abusive way, like we do the rest of the logos. But anyway, the point is being psychic is not an inherent gift. And it's not some weird talking to dead people thing. That's another realm entirely. We need a different word for that. Mediumship, maybe. I don't know. Psychicness, intuitive interpretation. It's not necessarily a hypervigilance, because that puts you in a state of fear. When you're in a state of like knowingness, there's not a lot of fear. There might be a second guessing that occasionally penetrates it, but there's not a lot of fear there. There's just I am getting this intuitively in my own body, and I'm now going to scan, not just because I've just finished scanning body. Now I'm going to scan my environment. What is really going on here? What is happening in my environment? And this brings in the breaking down. This is happening over here. That person said that thing over there. That person has this sort of weird mannerism. That person is conducting themselves in this manner that's not registering quite right with me. And this is where body language and macro expressions, micro expressions, whatever they call them, come into play, because this is all running through our DNA. The white coats want us to think that we know nothing and that we are nothing and that we're nothing. No, there's the 90% of junk DNA is all about interpreting these different modalities of life. So whether that be through a plant, through a crystal, through an expression on somebody's face, through a line on somebody's face, through talking with hands or not talking with hands, putting your hands in your pockets, do all this different, my tone of voice, all these different things can be interpreted as a facet of how you're going to intuitively move forward in a situation. If you can take all of that into account and begin to understand all of the weaving that's happening right around you and inside of you and how it correlates, that's an intuitive function, a modality of life. That's what it means to be psychic. Now, there are particular placements in the chart that make you just kind of instinctively get it. And it can be indoctrinated out of you, and you have to relearn it. Okay, that's the majority of childhood, is training you out of that via the structures we put in place, whether it be through school, through religion, through social programming, through different interactions that are constantly telling you you are invalidated and you are just talking hooey and you don't know what you mean when you say that, and all these weird things. Okay, so this is what we train the children out of it, and then they have to relearn it in their adulthood. And oftentimes, because we've been trained out of it, it causes a lot more trauma throughout the course of our lives until we figure out, I need to detox from whatever this substance is that's been fed into my system from day one, thus keeping me from being in my intuition and being in my own power and all that good gravy. Okay, so if you can learn to start to strengthen that intuition, the detox pattern is going to become increasingly, shall we say, not even needed. Because if you're allowed to exist in your own sovereignty in every way, shape, and form, you're going to be allowed to be in your intuition anyway. So the key to detox is through the intuition, gaining that trust with yourself that you can have your own back, that you can have your own sovereignty, that you can make wise and good decisions for yourself, not always based off of outside sources or information, right? You know, if you spend the time doing the work of accumulating some good foundational facts that will give you a way and a modality to move forward, that you can in fact trust yourself with making good decisions for yourself and for other people and beings and all that other good stuff, then you can start to kind of not depend on any outsource for comfort or numbing, if you will, whatever the addiction is doing for you. So maybe like if you need to gamble, right? You're in the need to you want to accumulate more, and you've been conned into this giving away means accumulating more. So if I could just do that one thing and then get that hit that you get when you win off of a... This was a bad selection. I don't know a lot about gambling with money. So, okay, let's take something else. Let's go with... That's my dog snoring. What about smoking? Let's take smoking. So you have Mad Men covered this. I got backup on this one. What is that need that we're fulfilling? Because if it didn't serve a purpose, you wouldn't do it. That might be different for everybody. I'm waiting for you. You think in your head what it's fulfilling for you. Okay? I want you to think in your skull what smoking might provide somebody. Now, it doesn't have to be just cigarettes. Smoking in general. It can be a crutch. It can be used as something that's not conducive to living a fulfilled life. Now, some people, they thrive off of it. I'm not here to say one way or another. I'm asking you, why do you need it as a crutch, though, if it is a crutch for you? Why is it there? What purpose is it serving? And what's the underlying... Barking fest, that's about ready to happen. What's the underlying subconscious river running through that? The undercurrent, if you will. Where's that leading you to? What did Mad Men say? A specific place of death, right? And typically, trigger warning, I'm going to talk a little bit about vetting oneself off the planet here quick. So if that's not for you, take care of yourself. I love you. See you in the next one. Keep your flame. But for those of you who can tolerate entertaining a discussion about it, so when we have a need to not be here anymore, and it's not socially acceptable to admit those things, it's not socially acceptable to do those things, it's not socially acceptable to cut yourself, but it is socially acceptable to smoke, and it's socially acceptable to drink. Now, you can argue the fact that those things are social, they're, what would you call it? Pastime, whatever. But if you knew the story, if you knew the real story behind especially the drinking part, you wouldn't see it that way. So when we're coming down to the addiction part of it and that undercurrent need for something, some way, somehow for us to slowly wither away because we don't feel like life is worth living. Okay, and that's going to inherently cut us off of our intuition. A lot of times, addicted people are not making good choices. Not just in the addictive pattern behavior, but in life in general, just not making good, financial decisions because you're spending money on something that you're burning and gulping down for, a couple of hours of fun every night, and then dreadful the next day that you need to ingest more poison just to negate the side effects of the poison. Alcohol is the most dangerous thing to detox from. So the undercurrent is that there's a subconscious need to dissipate off the planet. And if you can get yourself out of that mindset and into your intuition, it becomes easier to make those choices for yourself. It becomes easier to step in your intuition, and it becomes easier to detox from those feelings and emotions that we were trying to suppress with that particular substance or addiction. Because now we're addicted. We became addicted when the trauma bond happened in childhood. Okay, that's what triggered the addiction. What have you? That's what triggered it. The trauma bond. The flooding the system with the threat, whatever that might have been. The threat of abandonment, the threat of death. Well, same difference. But there was a threat, right? There's a threat brought on either through, parental not doing this, that, or the other thing, or, Scarface guy daddy not liking the way we did something, and now we've got to be either cast out, stoned, abandoned, crucified, whatever the heck it is, right? Some modality of trauma had to come in, or you got to go get a shot because there's this horrid virus going around, but don't worry, after you get the painful procedure, you're going to be okay. All this good stuff. It's still traumatic. Even though it might serve a function, it's still traumatic. It still secretes that pain, that adrenaline, that cortisol in our system of trauma, okay? And then they tell you it's going to be okay, this is for your benefit, this is going to save your life. Then that serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine, and endorphins get released too. That chemical mix is what makes up a trauma bond. So you're feeling excruciatingly in so much cognitive dissonance that you can't even comprehend at that point when you're little. So this detox that needs to happen on a very deep, yin, unseen level. And that means that we need to start picking out what it is that's constantly causing this in our environment and saying, I see you, I know you, not today. regale, whatever, whatever you want to say, right? It's not something that should be taken lightly. It's not something that you should just be like, I don't see that happening in my life, because it is. It is definitely happening in your life, and you need to detox from it. And the best way to do that is start recognizing it. You know, we're trained to not deal with emotions. We're trained to not understand emotion. We're trained to not feel it, not deal with it, and stuff it down until things that just inevitably kind of explode into a piss cookie puppy dog. So when we have to deal with that emotional overflow because we have dealt with way too much trauma and there's no relief coming in, the trouble is when we're still stuck in those situations. Sorry, I still have cat hair all over my face. You're gonna have to understand the modality of what you're already in if you want to get out of it. So if you know that you're in trauma mode and that you're addicted to that chemical cocktail, and even though you might not be going to the casino or smoking or drinking or shopaholicing or stuffing food in your face, or you got anything else? Yeah, it's playing games like that whole thing. You're still gonna probably be a part of society that's going to be like really, especially if you're working in the public. So to kind of diminish that and detox from that, avoiding it altogether is not it, because that's technically that's called the flight response, right? And you don't want to step into full fight mode either. And then you have fawn and freeze, right? So when we're dealing with it, we need to start using a logos, a language that adds to our strengthening of our intuition, and also kind of sets a little premise or a gateway or a gap or a little out, if you will, for the people who might be causing the trauma. Like, hey, I see you over there doing your trauma bit, which most of society's been trained to anyway. I think they took cluster B or narky McNarkerton out of the DSM, so it's normalized. Joy. Anyway, so you're operating in that environment already, so it's going to be hard to detox from that. So if you can start locating the patterns of behavior and start detoxing from that aspect of being subjected to it, and not understanding what's happening to you and going, oh my God, it's happening again. Knowing that you do have a choice on how you handle it, how you interpret it, and how you move forward with it. It's just gaining that emotional sovereignty is the challenge. And that emotional sovereignty often comes with a wisdom and a knowing of that other party thinks they have a right to you when they actually don't. And you have consented at some point in giving them that right because you are triggered by it, right? You are stepping into that emotional volatility, right? And oftentimes when we're stuck in those patterns, it's not because we necessarily want to be there, but because we have been entrained so frequent. I mean, it's just a repetitive continuum of a cycle that continues itself. So you're trying to escape off that pattern, right? You're trying to get yourself out of that trauma mode. But when we can signify to our own body, like, hey, I already see it, I know what it is, I don't need to respond how I typically respond, I can choose a different way to be here, and be in my own self, my own sovereignty, and not let them into that space. Now, I don't pretend to like be able to give you exactly the modality on which you need to deal with that, because I don't know your particular situation. Nor am I presuming that the level of dysfunction on which this toxic thing is happening. So you need to go somewhere else to adjust yourself for that. But what I can tell you is that if you can begin to distance yourself from the effects of it and begin to understand that if you just kind of pull back and don't give them what they're seeking, oftentimes that slow detox is what's going to help you out the best. And then you're going to get into your intuition. And then you're going to feel safe in your own skin. And then you're going to move out into the world with a little bit more, hey, I see what you're doing there. I don't think it's quite in anybody's best interest, including your own. Just you might maybe kind of want to reconsider. And oftentimes, if they are very egoic, they're gonna flat out no, and then you're probably gonna get traumatized again. But again, it's not you extending to them. It's you offering up an opportunity. If they, in their own egoic ignorance, choose to not, that's their choice. That's their sovereign choice, and you have nothing to do with it. This is not about you. If you are dealing with a narcissist, they don't even see you. So take that emotional trigger out of it, because you don't exist in this equation. You never have, and you never will. So once you can admit to that, the trauma immediately goes way down, because you're like, I'm not even here to them. I'm just sitting here in a belt. It's their toolbox that they feel like they can whip out. So stop being a tool. Cute, huh? So we've all done it. We've all been there. We've all been like, pick me, pick me. Stop screaming, pick me. Get the hell out of the tool belt, okay? Get your own tool belt that's not made up of human beings, and then operate off of that. This is becoming a very in-depth video. So detoxing off of that doesn't mean that you go on a warpath with your emotions. You take your emotions as very much a guiding force along this journey, but you do not take into account that anybody else is responsible for them, and that you somehow are blameless in the pattern that you signed up to put yourself on repeatedly, because you're not. Okay, that's a huge part of the detox is getting off the denial train and getting off the victim train, and then not flipping that either. Not flipping that they're the victim, that they're the blah 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 blah. No, everybody signs up for what they sign up for. It is what it is, and it has to be looked at in a more factual manner, so that you understand that even though you have hurt emotions, you can still step into the perspective of the other person, where you're not a person. You don't exist. You're just a little side character in their video game. That's all you are. That's all you're ever gonna be. There's no being like, did you know I was a person? Because I'm a person. I have like stuff I have stuff going on. They don't care. They're never gonna care. And that's a really hard pill to swallow for people who do care, because you're like, it's so foreign and alien to you on how you would ever exist off that premise. But a lot of people do it very successfully, I might add. In fact, most of them are quite successful, because we have set up the system to uplift that. The whole system uplifts that. Hey, Did you just want to see everybody as a slave and you're the master? Really? Cool. Do we have the game for you? So try to remove yourself from the game as much as possible. So getting on the detox of it and understanding just to see it for what it is, and then be like, hey, did you want to grow? No? Okay. You don't have to grow. You can stay exactly where you're at. You don't have to come over here and do jack diddly squat. Cool. Have a nice day. And then stay on your detox train. Stay on it. Every time you're confronted with something, hey, did you know that, like, there's this whole modality of living that's, like, way different over here? Did you want to... No? Okay. It doesn't have to be for you. It doesn't have to be for everybody. And that's the beauty of it. This is a multifractal situation that we live in. Everybody needs to do what they need to do. And you are under no obligation to take shite from anyone for any reason. Ever. So a lot of people will have to go through some sort of breakage or initiation, especially because a lot of times we inherited this through our family system. So our family structure is set up this way, and we have to cope and deal with that. Now, I have a few family members that see through it and are detoxing themselves as well, which is a great benefit because we understand the unique brand that comes with our family structure and how that abuse looks and operates. And so when we can kind of sit down and discuss it, it's quite the relief. And some people don't even have that. Some people are out there detoxing by themselves. Some people don't have friends that they can talk to because the friends don't understand what it is they're talking to. Either because, well, mostly because they're probably in denial about their own lives. So if someone gets really uncomfortable when you're talking about this thing, they might be one of those apathetic flying monkey things. So you need to be careful of that. And sometimes it is the case that they just have no concept of what it is that you're going through. Which, I don't know, I'd raise some alarm bells on that one. I would. So detoxing that means getting into your intuition, strengthening that, using your body as little signifiers go off in your crystal fluid to understand and interpret. And then strengthening that with everything you have, and then being able to understand that on this grand spectrum of life, there's going to be all sorts of people that do and do not see you, that understand and do not understand, that have desires and wants that you don't resonate with. They have goals and things that they need to do for themselves that are not on your priority list. And that's okay. That's what this vast spectrum fractal ecosystem is all about, is understanding that we all serve a purpose. And that just because you might resonate with someone, or because you might find that situation appealing, or you might do this, that, and the other thing, doesn't always make it the right choice. You might need to go over there and learn some things. That definitely could be. You might need to interact with that person on a different level than, like, you know, that magnetized basis of like karmic whatever. I have karmic people in my life that we're just friends, and we just connect for different reasons, whether it be for I call him my music guru. We go out and we like see stuff together, different bands and whatnot. And then I have a person that I, talk about my spirituality with. I have a person that I have like cleaning wars with. There's just different people that fit into your life that are probably on your karmic wheel and supposed to be there, and oftentimes some people come in and then they leave, and then there's some people that come in and then they go, and then they come back in and then they go. But you can decide how that happens for you. You don't have to be a victim of this. And that's what we've kind of entrained society to be like, whoever is the biggest, bestest, baddest victim wins wins the prize, wins the race. That couldn't be further from the truth. So detoxing off that too, because that releases the more hurt I can inflict upon myself, or that somebody else can inflict upon me, gets me the most gold stars. Oh man, that's a rough one, because that's the same chemical compound as the trauma bond anyway. So we're making victimhood into this beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing, when we should be just saying, hey, pick up your own sovereignty, let's get out of here. Okay. Pick up your staff, keep your flame, ignite your flame. Do what you need to do to, like, be a little bit more enthralled and in wonder when it comes to life, rather than, because it can get you down, definitely, for sure. But understanding it doesn't always have to be bad. Things always pass, right? We have to go through those times of process and understanding, and the depths and the darkness and the cold. But even that has arms. Even that will hold you in its embrace and say, did you want to learn this lesson yet? Did you want to come here and just be still for a while? Just be still. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anyone. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to think anything. Just that big, black, beautiful abyss, where you do have the control and the power to say, this is what I'm going to allow into my system, and this is what I'm not going to allow into my system. We do have that, right? We've just been conned out of believing that. So that might be a good belief structure to put in, is I have control over what comes in, what stays, and what leaves from myself. And that's it, and that's all. That's it, and that's all. We don't have sovereignty over another. You might be in charge of protecting them, caring for them, seeing to it that they get their needs met, and get all their cookies in a row, and their backpacks packed, and their lunches, and whatever the heck else is going on. Off to practice, off to boundary waters, whatever the heck it is. Things that need to be happening. But at the same time, you let them fall down and go boom. Because again, you need to let people be their own person, because people are. Whether you see them as that or not, and a lot of times people in a higher position or status or what do you want to call it, often don't see people below them as people. So you need to be cautious of that as well. So detox. Focus on detoxing from that trauma bond. Keep your sovereignty and your flame. I love you. See you next time.